If you're insecurely attached, love doesn't just live in your heart. It lives in your body, your breath, your nervous system. You crave closeness. You want to be desired. You long for intimacy that feels safe, steady, and real, not something that disappears the moment you start to relax. This is not about fixing yourself. This is about choosing the kind of person who doesn't make your soul feel like it's constantly auditioning for love. If you are insecurely attached, the most dangerous thing you can do is fall for someone who feels familiar, because familiar often means chaotic, unpredictable, hot and cold, and your nervous system mistakes that chaos for passion. But the person you actually need is different. You don't need emotional fireworks. You need emotional safety. You need the kind of connection where your body can finally exhale, where closeness doesn't feel like a question, where affection is natural, steady, and deeply reassuring, where desire isn't tangled with anxiety. The right person will make you feel wanted without pressure, desired without confusion, close without fear. This is the type of bond where intimacy builds slowly and powerfully, where trust becomes attraction, where attraction becomes comfort, and comfort becomes something quietly magnetic. They don't overwhelm you with intensity. They invite you into stability. They don't trigger your attachment wounds. They help you heal them, because real love, the kind that rewires you, doesn't feel like emotional chaos. It feels like coming home inside your own body. When emotional safety is present, something profound happens inside you. Your body stops bracing for impact. Your mind stops scanning for danger. Your heart no longer feels like it's standing at the edge of a cliff waiting to be pushed. Instead of living in survival mode, you begin to experience connection as a place of rest. And that shift from tension to trust is where real attraction is born. Most people think attraction is created through excitement, unpredictability, and emotional highs and lows. But for someone with an insecure attachment style, that kind of stimulation isn't chemistry, it's familiarity with chaos. The nervous system mistakes emotional turbulence for passion because it's used to intensity. But intensity does not build bonds, safety does. When you are emotionally safe with someone, you don't have to perform, you don't have to impress, you don't have to chase reassurance or analyze every word for hidden meaning. You get to show up as you are, without armor. And in that space of openness, something deeply magnetic begins to grow. You start feeling seen instead of evaluated, desired instead of tested, chosen instead of chased. This is why emotional safety is not boring, it's intoxicating in a quiet, grounding way. It allows intimacy to unfold naturally. It allows desire to deepen instead of spike and crash. The more secure you feel, the more present you become. The more present you are, the more connected you feel. And that connection becomes the foundation of genuine attraction. There is a particular kind of closeness that comes from knowing someone is not going anywhere. It softens your breath, it steadies your heartbeat, it makes your thoughts slower, clearer, kinder. You stop trying to earn love and start experiencing it. And when love is experienced instead of pursued, it becomes deeply satisfying. Emotional safety also changes how you relate to yourself. When someone treats your feelings with care, you begin doing the same. When someone respects your boundaries, you learn to respect your own. When someone shows consistency, you start trusting not just them, but your judgment, your worth, your future. Attraction that grows from safety is not explosive. It is expansive. It doesn't consume you. It strengthens you. It doesn't distract you from your life. It becomes a stable part of it. And in that stability, you discover a new kind of desire, one that doesn't feel desperate or urgent, but warm, steady, towards, and deeply fulfilling. This is the kind of connection that heals, not because it fixes you, but because it reminds you what it feels like to finally stop fighting for love and start living inside it. There is something quietly powerful about a calm connection. It doesn't arrive with fireworks or chaos. It doesn't sweep you off your feet only to drop you into uncertainty. Instead, it settles into your life in a way that feels natural, grounding, and deeply intimate. And for someone who has spent years equating emotional turbulence with passion, this kind of connection can feel unfamiliar at first, but it is exactly what allows real intimacy to grow. Calm connection creates a space where closeness doesn't feel rushed or forced. So there is no pressure to perform, to impress, or to constantly prove your value. You don't have to earn attention or chase affection. It is already there, steady and present. This allows your body to relax. Your nervous system no longer feels like it's in a race against time. Instead of bracing for loss, you begin to trust the moment you're in. In that state of trust, intimacy becomes something beautiful and slow. Conversations deepen because neither of you is distracted by fear. Eye contact lasts longer. Silence feels comfortable instead of awkward. Being together doesn't feel like an emotional test, it feels like a place of refuge. And in that refuge, attraction grows in a way that is both gentle and powerful. This kind of connection doesn't create emotional spikes, it creates emotional roots. The bond strengthens not because of dramatic moments, but because of consistent presence. Small gestures start carrying enormous weight. A look, a word, a shared breath becomes meaningful because it is wrapped in safety and mutual respect. Over time, that meaning turns into a magnetic pull that feels warm instead of urgent, steady instead of overwhelming, calm. Connection also changes the way you experience closeness. Instead of fearing vulnerability, you begin to crave it. You want to be known. You want to share your inner world. And when that sharing is met with care, something inside you opens that you didn't realize had been closed for a long time. You stop protecting yourself from love and start allowing it in. What makes this type of intimacy so deeply attractive is that it strengthens your sense of self rather than destabilizing it. You don't lose your center in someone else's emotions. You don't shrink or overextend to keep the connection alive. You remain whole, and from that wholeness, desire becomes something natural, mutual, and deeply satisfying. In a calm connection, love doesn't feel like something you are constantly chasing. It feels like something you are finally experiencing, and that experience, grounded in trust and presence, becomes one of the most intimate bonds a person can know. There is something undeniably magnetic about consistency. It doesn't announce itself loudly. It doesn't rely on dramatic gestures or sudden bursts of attention. Instead, it shows up quietly again, building trust in a way that feels almost invisible at first, until you realize how deeply it has changed you. For someone who has lived inside emotional unpredictability, consistency becomes one of the most powerful forms of attraction there is. Consistency creates safety without needing to explain itself. When someone is steady in their presence, their words, their actions, your mind stops searching for hidden meanings. You no longer have to decode every message or analyze every silence. You begin to relax into the connection instead of trying to control it. That relaxation opens the door for real closeness, where intimacy grows from ease rather than anxiety. What makes consistency so seductive is that it removes the emotional noise. There is no constant wondering where you stand. No guessing if today's warmth will turn into tomorrow's distance. You start feeling secure enough to be real, to share your thoughts without filtering them, to express your needs without fear of being too much. And when you are met with the same steady care in return, something inside you softens. Over time, this steady presence begins to reshape how you experience attraction. Desire no longer feels like a chase, it feels like an invitation. Instead of craving intensity, you start craving depth. Instead of longing for emotional highs, you start appreciating emotional peace. The connection becomes something you look forward to rather than something you worry about. Consistency also builds emotional trust, and emotional trust is the foundation of true intimacy. When you know someone will show up for you, not just when things are easy, but when they are complicated, messy, or uncomfortable, your heart begins to open in a different way. You stop guarding yourself, you stop holding back parts of who you are. You allow yourself to be fully seen. That kind of openness creates a closeness that feels both comforting and deeply attractive. You begin to associate the person with stability, warmth, and reassurance. Being with them feels grounding. Being away from them doesn't create panic, it creates appreciation. And that balance strengthens the bond even further. Consistency teaches you that love doesn't have to be dramatic to be powerful. It doesn't have to hurt to be real. It doesn't have to be unstable to be exciting. In fact, the more stable it becomes, the more satisfying it feels, because within that stability, your heart finally finds room to breathe, to trust, and to grow. This is why consistency is not just a trait, it is an experience. And once you feel what it's like to be held by that kind of steady presence, it becomes one of the most irresistible forces in connection. When your nervous system begins to feel safe, everything about the way you experience love starts to change. You no longer live in constant alert, scanning for signs of rejection, abandonment, or emotional withdrawal. Instead, your body learns that connection does not equal danger. This is what secure love does. It doesn't just comfort your mind, it heals your entire emotional system from the inside out. For someone with insecure attachment, the nervous system has often been trained by past experiences to expect loss, inconsistency, or emotional pain. Even when things are going well, there is an underlying tension, a quiet fear that it won't last. Secure love interrupts that pattern. Through steady presence, patience, and care, it slowly teaches your body that closeness can be safe, predictable, and nourishing. This healing doesn't happen through grand gestures or dramatic moments. It happens in the everyday interactions, the way someone listens without rushing you, the way they respond instead of react, the way they stay connected even when conversations become difficult. Each of these moments sends a message to your nervous system: you are safe here. And over time, that message begins to replace the old ones that said you had to be on guard. As your nervous system calms, your thoughts begin to change. You stop assuming the worst. You stop preparing for heartbreak before it even arrives. You become more present, more open, more able to receive affection without bracing yourself. This emotional shift allows intimacy to deepen naturally. You no longer fear vulnerability, you start welcoming it. The most beautiful part of this healing process is that it restores your sense of inner stability. You no longer depend on emotional chaos to feel alive. You no longer mistake anxiety for love. You begin to recognize that peace, trust, and steadiness are not signs of boredom. They are signs of real connection. Secure love also helps you reconnect with yourself. When someone treats your feelings with respect and consistency, you begin to treat yourself the same way. You learn to honor your needs, protect your boundaries, and choose relationships that nourish rather than drain you. In this way, healing extends beyond the relationship and into every part of your life. Eventually, your nervous system stops operating from fear and starts operating from trust. Love becomes something you experience, not something you survive. You stop living in emotional defense mode and start living in emotional openness. And from that place of openness, connection becomes richer, deeper, and far more fulfilling. This is what true healing feels like. Not intense, not overwhelming, just steady, warm, and quietly life-changing. True intimacy is not loud. It doesn't arrive with emotional urgency, pressure, or the constant need for reassurance. It enters your life gently in a way that feels grounding rather than overwhelming. For someone who has known relationships filled with uncertainty and emotional tension, this kind of intimacy can feel unfamiliar, but it is the kind that finally allows you to breathe. When intimacy is grounded, you don't feel like you have to prove your worth in order to be loved. You don't worry about saying the wrong thing, asking for too much, or being misunderstood. You feel safe enough to be honest, to express your emotions clearly, and to share your inner world without fear of being judged or abandoned. This safety creates a deep sense of connection that is built on trust instead of anxiety. Anxious intimacy is driven by fear, fear of losing the connection, fear of not being enough, fear of being left behind. It keeps your nervous system in a constant state of alert, always watching for signs of distance or rejection. Grounded intimacy, on the other hand, teaches your body that closeness does not require survival mode. It teaches you that love does not need to hurt to be real. In grounded intimacy, vulnerability becomes a strength instead of a risk. You open up not because you are desperate for reassurance, but because you genuinely want to be seen. You listen not because you are afraid of losing the person, but because you care about understanding them. The emotional exchange becomes mutual, balanced, and deeply fulfilling. This kind of intimacy also strengthens your sense of self. Instead of losing yourself in the connection, you become more of who you are. You feel supported, valued, and respected. You don't shrink your needs to maintain closeness. You don't overextend yourself to keep the bond intact. You show up as your full self, knowing that your presence is enough. As grounded intimacy grows, emotional tension dissolves. Conversations become easier, affection becomes more natural, conflict becomes something you navigate together instead of something you fear. Even difficult moments feel manageable because they are held within a foundation of trust and care. Over time, this kind of intimacy transforms the way you experience love. It no longer feels like something you are chasing, it feels like something you are living. You stop seeking validation and start experiencing genuine connection. And in that connection, you discover a kind of closeness that is calm, steady, and deeply satisfying, the kind that allows your heart to finally rest. Desire does not grow in chaos, it grows in trust. When trust is present, your heart softens, your body relaxes, and your mind stops preparing for loss. This emotional safety becomes the fertile ground where real attraction begins to take root. Without trust, desire becomes anxious, rushed, and fragile. With trust, it becomes warm, steady, and deeply fulfilling. When you trust someone, you no longer feel the need to guard your feelings. You allow yourself to be seen, not just the strong parts, but the vulnerable ones too. That openness creates a closeness that is both intimate and powerful. You start to feel emotionally connected in a way that goes beyond surface level attraction. The bond deepens, and with that depth, desire naturally expands. Trust changes the way you experience affection. You no longer wonder what it means or where you stand. A simple look, a kind word, a shared moment carries more weight because it is grounded in emotional security. You feel chosen, valued, and wanted without needing constant proof. That sense of being emotionally held makes closeness feel natural instead of forced. As trust grows, you become more present in the connection, you listen more fully, you respond more thoughtfully. You give your attention without distraction, and when two people are fully present with each other, attraction becomes something quiet and magnetic. It doesn't demand attention, it draws it. This kind of desire is not driven by urgency or fear, it is driven by connection. You want to be close not because you're afraid of losing the bond, but because the bond itself feels meaningful and nourishing. You don't chase reassurance, you rest in it. Trust also allows intimacy to deepen over time. Instead of burning bright and fast, the connection strengthens slowly and steadily. Each shared experience, each honest conversation, each moment of emotional support adds another layer to the bond. With every layer, desire becomes richer, more complex and more satisfying. In this space, love becomes something you grow into together. You stop questioning whether you are enough. You stop worrying about where you stand. You simply experience the connection as it is, stable, warm, and deeply fulfilling. And from that experience, desire continues to evolve in a way that feels both powerful and peaceful. This is why trust is not just important in love, it is essential, because where trust lives, desire thrives. And when desire is rooted in trust, it becomes one of the most beautiful and enduring forces in any connection. And this is the shift. You stop chasing love that feels like survival. You stop mistaking anxiety for passion. You stop settling for connection that keeps your heart in a constant state of doubt. Instead, you choose the kind of love that steadies you, the kind that holds you, the kind that doesn't demand you lose yourself to be close. You choose the person who feels like peace in a world that taught you chaos, the person who doesn't just love you, but helps you finally love being alive inside your own heart. And when you choose that, you don't just change your relationships, you change your entire life.